just because that takes a second to kind of get up and running. All right, everybody should be admitted and we're recording.
Kelly, thanks for organizing that for us, and thank you for organizing this meeting. This is Mayor Gailey, and this is going to be a city council workshop meeting, and it is, what is today, September 1st, 2020, and it's 7 p.m. And this meeting is going to be via Zoom, and people can, one, go in on Zoom and watch the meeting, or call in on a phone number as well. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do a Pledge of Allegiance. I know it's not on the agenda, but I think it's a good thing. We got a flag behind Kim. If you would join me. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, just on a couple of quick announcements. Today we had a real good meeting today with Representative Larson, who we toured around North Cove Park, as well as gave him a quick briefing on what we've been doing in Lake Stevens, what we are doing in Lake Stevens, and what we could be doing in Lake Stevens if there's a possibility of any federal stimulus money out there. It was a very good meeting. He had very good questions and follow-ups on. So that was a time well spent. And I believe we have Representative Del Benny next week. So good stuff. So that's just a quick announcement. We've got a lot of stuff to get through tonight. Council President Tajik, do you have anything?
I do not. Let's just get right to the agenda.
I'm with you. All right, let's go into multifamily tax exemption. Hey, and just so we remember, I know we just came out of a sabbatical, so this is a workshop. This is an opportunity for city council members to openly discuss these subjects that we're dealing with tonight. And we don't take citizens' comments or questions during this. It's just a discussion between council members and staff. So that's kind of some ground rules for the workshop. And Sabrina, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. Kelly, you have a copy of my presentation. Would you like to, or should I share screen? How would we like to do this?
If you could share screen, that'd be great. I made you a co-host, so you should be able to do that just fine. If you can't, I can find it.
Not a problem. I should be able to, so just give me a moment and I'll have that running. Okay, great. Let me just share screen. All right. And can everybody see that?
Perfect, yep.
Fantastic. All right, let me do quick. Apologize. One moment, everyone. I appreciate your patience. And okay, thank you. I apologize. I just need to rearrange a couple things at the moment. All right, so we're going to use this format so I can see my notes while presenting to everyone. So I appreciate everybody's patience so I can be using this in my notes at the same time. So thank you all, everyone. The multifamily tax exemption is a program that the state offers through the RCW. It is a program that City Council was interested in having staff look further into as a potential for adoption, as the city is of a size that is acceptable. Any city over 15,000 in population is eligible to participate in the program. The MFTE, also known as the Multifamily Tax Exemption, is an incentive geared towards cities to create multifamily development and affordable multifamily development within their jurisdictions. There are two specific criteria for these two. There is an 8-year program and a 12-year program. And the programs permit cities to incentivize multifamily. So a little bit of a background behind this is, so in the city of Lake Stevens, the median household income for Snohomish County is $89,000 a year. For an individual worker, the median is $38,000. So the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Snohomish County is $14,051. Or excuse me, I apologize, $1,451. That was a terrible wrong number. And currently, 55% of renters in the Lake Stevens area are cost burdened. So what that means is that a third of this group's income is going towards their rent, a third or more. So that includes your utilities, that includes the rent of the unit you're living in, and any potential fees that are included in that. So as I described earlier, the multifamily tax exemption, it gears towards being able to provide more multifamily housing to provide opportunities for more housing options. So it encourages housing variety and encourages affordable units. So I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. The MFTE program is geared towards cities that create targeted areas. As part of the multifamily tax exemption, cities in place target areas where this tax incentive can be used. The program then offers two timeframes. The 8-year is purely for the incentive of creating multifamily housing. The 12-year offers a multifamily, but 20% of that multifamily must meet a specific group of anyone that makes that which is designated as low income or moderate income per the RCW, which in the RCW, a low income is indicated as anyone that makes under 80% of the median income for the area. And moderate income is anyone that makes 80% or over to 110% of the median income. So the 12-year program is geared towards creating an affordable component within the multifamily housing. So a little bit about the numbers in Lake Stevens. Looking at the past 5 years, the city of Lake Stevens has created 1,752 single-family homes. While in that same time frame, we have only created 225 units of multifamily housing. Moving forward with that, looking at these changes, we would like to see these options of incentivizing that multifamily housing to create more of a balance between these two numbers, create more multifamily to create more opportunities for alternative housing within the city of Lake Stevens. Looking back at those target areas that are necessary for using the multifamily tax exemption program, staff has looked at using our sub areas, so the downtown, the Lake Stevens Center, and the 20th Street sub areas as target zones, as they are already predetermined areas with boundaries set by our zoning code through our sub area plan. However, staff is looking at adding on to potentially the downtown target zone by adding in adjacent multifamily and mixed use zones that would benefit from having this tax incentive program. These areas would include the multifamily zone to the southeast of the downtown area, the planned business district to the north, and the adjacent mixed use to the northwest. In addition, pre-existing multifamily north of the downtown area. Lake Stevens Center, staff is not proposing any additional add-ons as there's already a significant area of space that could be used for the multifamily tax exemption program. For a little bit of background, our commercial area permits mixed use in commercial zones with, permits multifamily in a mixed use setting in our commercial zoning districts. So anywhere in the red that you see in this map would be a opportunity for a project to be mixed use and have a multifamily component. That goes the same for our 20th Street target area, proposed target area. So considering that there is a significant amount of single family that is in the sub area, the area we would be looking to target is the commercial area to incentivize a mixed use structures that would have a multifamily housing component. So if the city was to take on a multifamily tax exemption program and adopt it into our code, we have specific criteria under the RCW that we have to meet. The amendment we would have to produce would need to have application process established in the code, requirements for demolishing and rehabilitation of existing structures to use this program. It has to have a application and eligibility criteria similar to other areas of our zoning code. If we were to adopt the 12-year program, there would need to be affordability covenants that could be handled by Affordable Housing Alliance, or we could look at alternative methods for handling covenants that would then require structures to have affordability for a duration of time with the acceptance of the 12-year program. This would be done through the application process and would then be tied to the building rather than being tied to the permit. And of course, as part of this, the state wants to know how this process is impacting the community and seeing how it's working. So there are reporting criteria that we must meet to be given to the state on a yearly basis. So looking at a comparison that we took from other jurisdictions around the Puget Sound, taking just 16 samplings of cities throughout the Puget Sound region, 11 out of 16 of those jurisdictions adopted the 8-year exemption, and 16 out of 16 of them adopted the 12-year exemption. I'd like to clarify that a city may adopt both or one or the other of these exemption programs. You do not have to pick one. You can do both, or you can pick one. In addition to this, we were speaking about eligibility criteria. The RCW does not require a minimum number of units to be constructed for the eligibility of this exemption, but many jurisdictions have adopted minimum size requirements for the number of units created to qualify for a multifamily tax exemption. Taking a straight average of the jurisdictions, taking out Linwood as the outlier, as they had a significantly higher average at 50 units, when it was more common to see 4 units as the minimum. The average ended up to be about 8 to 10 units as a baseline for the creation of multifamily. Now, this was something that was brought up at Planning Commission that I have added to this, which is how does this financially impact the city? So speaking with our finance staff members, the city's current tax levy is 0.1%. This means that for $1 of tax revenue, or excuse me, the city collects $1 of tax revenue per $1,000 of assessed value annually. So if you equate this to a project that's assessed at $5 million, that means $5,000 in taxes would not be collected by the city. For an 8-year project, that would mean $40,000. And for a 12-year project, that would mean $60,000 over the course of the entire project. So some things I'd like to have council look at is the division between the 8 and 12-year, which I'm happy to go over again. Whether we would want specific minimums beyond just having a minimum number of units, and what is the council's current feeling for minimum requirements to be eligible for this criteria, and to what are your thoughts on the target areas that have been proposed by staff. The maps are available in your packet as well. So if I need to switch back between any of these maps, I'm happy to do so. And I will turn the mic over.
Council, maybe I can just summarize some of the points that we've heard tonight. So this multifamily tax exemption, it was a tool that Olympia passed a few years ago. It does have a sunset on it. It's only going to be around for a couple of more years to start projects under. And it was another tool that the state has looked at to encourage affordable housing options as well as different housing options. So really how it works, as Sabrina has discussed, the council could look at an 8-year, we'll call it a moratorium on our tax assessment, or a 12-year. And that is an offset for construction costs, essentially, because multifamily projects are more expensive to get off the ground than are a lot of single family projects. So that's really how the incentive works. They get a credit for that portion of the project related to housing. If it was in a mixed use development, they would still be paying their property tax on the commercial side of the project. So really that's just the goal, is to provide another option to our developers as our land supply gets a little scarcer. That would be an incentive. So again, hoping to get some direction on the target areas tonight, and specifically if council has, 1, interest in participating in the program at all, 2, if you have a preference for the 8 or 12-year or both, and then again looking at the target areas.
I'm going to chime in real quick. I don't know why we're putting in certain areas. With our infill code, I think whatever we can do for affordable housing, I'm for. I think we should go as little as 4 units and larger. And I don't know why we're targeting certain areas. I think if with the infill code and all the different areas, I think whatever we can do for affordable housing like Stevens is going to be helpful. I'm for the 8-year and the 12-year plan. And I think make this as simple as possible for developers to choose to help with low-income housing. So that's where I'm at.
You do have to identify a targeted area though. So that is part of the criteria.
Oh, okay.
So put a circle around the city.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I am very supportive of this. I see a great need for affordable housing for our community. And COVID-19 shows that even more so. I did call a friend of mine, Brian Smith, who's with Volunteers of America, who works with affordable housing issues and works with the Housing Alliance, I believe. And he's encouraged us to follow this plan. And thank you so much, Sabrina, for your carefully thought out and expressed explanation of what this is about. The only question I had, and I think I have it answered now, the average based on the cities surveyed was a minimum of 8 to 10 units. I guess, I think I understand that now. I misunderstood it to think out of 200 houses, only 8 to 10 would be affordable housing. But now I see that's not what that was saying at all. So that's because Sabrina did a good job. Thank you, Sabrina.
Not a problem, Mary. If I may add, before Kim, I apologize. There are criteria that we must meet for these target areas as described in the RCW. It must meet the definition of urban area, which our sub areas do in fact meet that definition. So I understand the interest in trying to accommodate as much area of the city as possible. However, there are specific criteria in the RCW for us to accept and be able to adopt this for it to be accepted.
Okay, so circle the city and then those areas that can't be used, we just don't use. I have a question though. One, Mary, I'm glad you understood the 8 to 10, but I did not. So the minimum rule, what you're talking about, the minimum was 8 for the average of the 16 jurisdictions. What does that actually mean? The minimum in the 12-year, there had to be 8 units that were low income or medium income, or what does that actually mean? I must have missed something.
It refers to the scale of the project. And if it's, what's the break point on making it effective? If it's a 4-unit complex, it may not have the same cost burden to develop as a 20-unit complex. So just trying to get a baseline.
It's actually number of the units, not
Correct.
the number of low-income units.
Correct.
So the number of low-income units is a 20% number of whatever is there. So, okay,
Yes.
I got it. The other question I have is, have we had any developers express interest in using this?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
This is Angie. I just want to chime in and express my 100% support in moving forward. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into identifying appropriate areas according to the RCW. I think that it is our responsibility to ensure that we are contributing to the stock of affordable housing within Snohomish County. We certainly have members of our own community who are struggling. I am for the 12-year plan to ensure that there is affordable housing set aside for those low and medium income families. And I'm excited that the work has gone into define this for us and to help move it forward. So to Russ and Sabrina, thank you very much.
I'm really
So,
definitely in support
Angie,
of
then
both.
does that mean that you're not for the 8-year? You would rather just have the 12-year, or are you looking at having both?
I certainly would not say that I would only support the 12-year at the risk of not having it go forward at all. I appreciate that the 12-year has the requirement that there are units, that there are affordable units set aside. So that would be my preference. I'm supportive of the 8-year as well, but if we have to designate or choose, I'd like to see our energy go towards having the 12-year exemption.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Councilmember Frederick?
Yeah, I was just chiming in to say that I would definitely support both. And I want to echo the comments of both Kim and Marcus. With the exception of those areas that obviously we can't use, I don't see any reason why we don't shoot for the moon and circle the whole city and then start excluding pieces as needed.
Okay.
I'll just have my support to Kim and Marcus and Sean. My thoughts are very much in line with theirs. Let's provide maximum flexibility to the developers to be able to address this issue.
And I would lend my support to those comments as all. I guess I would maybe take the reverse approach a little bit, is is circle the city and then highlight the areas that aren't eligible. And as I look at the city map here, in the southeast corner that's been highlighted as additional proposed target areas, a good portion of that has been developed or is critical areas. So I don't see a lot of activity happening in that portion. So as Marcus suggested, I think we should focus on the bigger picture and maybe highlight the areas that don't have the capacity. The only other question I would have is just for clarification, the tax exemption only exempts the city portion of the real estate tax. Is that correct? The school portion, the state, the county portion would still be due.
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One other question I had for you, Sabrina. On your slide, you had 4 or 5 bars of criteria. One of them talked about the demolition or revitalization of existing structures. I don't understand how that, what that criteria means. Does that mean that they're having to use those, or can they also do this on empty property?
That's a great question. So one of the pieces that this includes is taking older pre-existing multifamily and tearing it down, building brand new, to using the multifamily tax exemption, or revitalizing existing properties to add additional multifamily. The intention is that you will not be losing homes for the creation of new, so that there's not a net loss of potentially affordable housing. A great example of this would be, we do have Snohomish County Housing Authority properties in the city that is actually in that multifamily area north of the city that is affordable housing through the county. So if somebody was to, let's say, go in and want to redevelop that site, there would be provisions for the demolition of such structures, and so there was no net loss of housing for anyone that was particularly living there at the time. This would also be the opportunity for rehabilitating of those kind of structures to ensure, again, no net loss of housing.
Okay, well, that's one thing I understand is no net loss, right, Marcus? Thank you, Sabrina. That was very well put.
Not a problem.
Hey, Sabrina, I had one question from your presentation. The number 225 of the current multifamily that we've done over I think the past 5 years, I think you said, does that include the apartment complexes that are going up on 20th South Street Southeast right now?
225 is almost solely because of that project.
Okay, so that includes that project.
Correct, and the majority of the numbers are solely from that project.
Okay, because I was trying to think of where that was, so that makes sense. Okay, perfect.
So as an addition to that, what about the single apartments that they're building on Lake Drive? 40 units there.
Those have not been approved.
Is that included in, will that be included in our number at the when it's done?
I am terribly sorry, Councilman Dontry. No, there have not been any building permits issued on that structure at the time, so we were not able to count them into the total at this moment.
I understand that. That's great. And I know they're just now getting ready to pour cement and all that, because I'm right next door almost. By the way, the trucks beep, beep, beep all day long is just a wonderful thing. But I guess my question really is if we maintain that number of 255, we're going to add to it in the future. Would single bedroom apartments be a part of that 255 and growing number?
There was not a limiter put on the number of bedrooms per unit that was used in that number. It was purely the number of multifamily units being generated in the city. And that included 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms. It was purely looking at the creation of units as a whole. So
Okay,
yes, they would be included.
great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, council. Our next steps, this will go back to the planning commission for public hearing, back to city council then for their public hearing, and looking for an adoption date, probably November-ish of this year.
Great, thanks, Russ.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. All right, let's move on to the next subject, which is a resolution recognizing and supporting police officers and law enforcement professionals. I'll take this one on. It's something that I spoke about with one of your fellow council members several months ago, and something that we thought would be beneficial to show our support for the police officers in our community, for the hard work that they do, for sometimes a thankless job, a dangerous job. And, you know, much like we express our support for our public works folks and our city staff, and for other folks that do great work for the city, this is an opportunity for us to recognize our own Lake Stevens police officers for the work that they do. So with that, I created this resolution, and in conjunction with one of your council members, and I present it to you tonight for discussion to see if it's something we can all jump on board with.
I'm just going to go ahead and jump in right off the bat. I tend to be slow to comment in some of these issues, but I'm very supportive of the resolution. I think it's important that we recognize our law enforcement officers. You know, knowing the good work that our officers do in the current environment that they operate in, not only current events, but COVID. I think it's important that we show them our full support. Our officers do an amazing job, and I want to thank you for doing the resolution and voice my support for it.
I'll jump in. I would just like to say congratulations once again for getting us accredited. I'm in 100% a support of this as well. Great job.
I'm also 100% in favor of this resolution.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I might be the dissenting voice in the room, but I have some concerns and some comments and just a few questions. I'm curious to know, I also have tremendous respect for Chief Dyer for the Lake Stevens Police Department. Worked with them in a couple different capacities, and find them to be just wonderful professionals. I didn't read this resolution though as support of the Lake Stevens Police Department. I read it as support of law enforcement nationwide, and I'm curious just to hear more about sort of the intent behind the resolution, and if that was done on purpose.
I think it speaks for itself. It supports all law enforcement, and all law enforcement, you know, and if there's an issue with those outliers within law enforcement, we've addressed that within the resolution.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a difficult time in our nation to provide and offer up blanket support for law enforcement. I think that support of law enforcement as a whole, as a nation, is not necessarily representative of our community voice. I think it's divisive, honestly. And I think that honoring law enforcement outside of Lake Stevens is outside of our scope as the Lake Stevens City Council. I think that, you know, law enforcement isn't seen as necessarily beneficial by those outside of the sort of majority population. For vulnerable folks in our communities, those with mental illness, individuals who are struggling with addiction, folks, people of color, their experiences with law enforcement are different. And so I think for us to support a blanket resolution supporting law enforcement negates those voices. We've had some folks during public comments speak very candidly and courageously about their experiences with law enforcement. And my fear and concern is that if we accept this resolution, what we're saying to those folks is that their voices don't matter. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that this isn't representative of our community, and would love to talk about a way to maybe more focus on the Lake Stevens Police Department versus the law enforcement throughout our nation. Thanks.
I'd like to speak up here as well. When I analyze this resolution, I can find 4 areas where I would say 100%, and Chief Dyer knows. He knows that I am very strongly in support of our police department here in Lake Stevens. Those would be the 4 whereases on the first part of this resolution. I won't read them to you. You all have them in front of you. My biggest problem was, and also wanted to do a thank you for the accountability and self-discipline training that I'll be able to be part of tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works, Chief Dyer. That's wonderful. But when we got into the part, be it resolved by the Lake Stevens City Council, and we say things like, and across the United States who act ethically and with integrity in the pursuit of preserving safe and secure communities. So are we supposed to stand up for all police? I think that's a little bit out of my range of what I would do as a city council member in Lake Stevens. And particularly number 7, where it encourages the citizens of Lake Stevens and people of the United States to remain aware of the essential mission law enforcement personnel undertake, and so forth. I don't think that's really my job to tell the citizens of Lake Stevens what they should do. I trust the citizens of Lake Stevens to come up with their own conclusions. And as Angie mentioned, we want to be inclusive of people that do not have, unfortunately, a positive experience with the police departments elsewhere. I would say I have personally not heard of anything here in Lake Stevens, but I haven't heard everything, but still I stand in support of our police department here in Lake Stevens. I support them in every way. And Chief Dyer knows I actually stood outside of the police department and waved a banner saying, thank you, frontliners, because I know their job is very high stress. And I'm regretful that that is where we are today. So I would have to say we need to work on this and clean it up a little bit, maybe before I would be happy with this resolution as it stands. So a second outlier, oh well. Thank you for listening.
Last but not least, I would offer my support for this resolution. And the only change I would suggest is that on page 2, it talks about, be it resolved by the Lake Stevens City Council as follows, this board on behalf of the city of Lake Stevens. I think that should read City Council rather than, I don't think we've ever been referred to as a board. So other than that, I would support this resolution.
I haven't weighed in yet. I'd also like to weigh in my support, and I think, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I support our law enforcement in general, and the part in the resolution that talks about those who do their job, because anyone who in whatever line of work does not comply with the expectation should be held accountable. And so I think it's noteworthy that that's noted in the resolution. I'm law enforcement is a foundational basis for a safe society, and without which, we can't have the quality of life that that we want and need. So I just want to thank those responsible for putting that forward, and I look forward to voting on it at a future council meeting.
Mayor, is it okay if I chime in a little bit?
I'd love to hear from you, Chief.
I'd say that on behalf of the Lake Stevens Police Department, I want to thank the council for their kind words tonight. It's important that we have a partnership within the community, and the things that the council have said tonight show that that partnership is strong in Lake Stevens, and we look forward to moving forward and strengthening that relationship and doing what we can to make sure that we serve all the citizens of Lake Stevens the way they should be served. So again, I just want to say thank you for the support and the kind words.
You bet, Chief. Any other discussion on the resolution? So I guess I'll address some of the concerns that were brought up. I would absolutely disagree with you, Councilmember Jorstad. I think that there's a vast majority of Lake Stevens citizens who support law enforcement, who think that law enforcement does a great job around the country. And because of that, I think that we need to not only recognize those our Lake Stevens PD folks, but law enforcement in general. So that's where I'm at on that.
I appreciate your response. I think there are folks that really struggle with law enforcement across the country in our community. And so, so I think we're both right? Like, I think that we both have the experience of knowing people and knowing people's experiences on both sides of the continuum. And that's what makes our community great, right? We have a community full of diverse voices and diverse experiences. I think that this resolution only represents one side of that continuum, and that's my concern. I think that we're living in a county right now where there's a recall effort against our county sheriff, and I know that there's support for that effort in our city and throughout our county, and he's part of that person is part of law enforcement. And so I think that my pain point with this is that blanket support for law enforcement, because there are examples on a pretty regular basis of those outliers, that make it hard to support the system as a whole. And I just want to make sure that we're not speaking for community members that don't share this support. That's all.
Well, I'd like to point out that the reason that we have issues with police officers in a lot of the communities is because we hear about them. And the reason we don't hear about the good guys is because there's nothing to talk about except they're doing their job. And I would submit that it's less than 1% of the police force in the United States that are the problem causers. And with that kind of an issue in anything, you're going to have people that are against it because of that 1%. And to leave out the 99% because of the 1% is not something I'm comfortable with. I do not like the fact that we have community members that have had issues with the police. I would bet that there are several of those people that have had issue with the police that are basically on the wrong side of the law. If there are other issues with people that have issues with police, I should say, that are really not really doing anything except getting in the police's face. We see it on TV every day. They should just cool off and wait and see what happens, that kind of thing. Getting in a police officer's face and doing that to try to rile them up is just not the way to do it. But that being said, it's still just a few police officers, admittedly doing terrible things that I do not condone, nor would I think anybody would condone, but it isn't a majority. And it's certainly not a majority of our citizens that have problems with police. So I don't think that this resolution says anything other than the fact that we support what our police officers throughout the United States, and especially in Lake Stevens, do as a job. And with the few bad apples that we take in anything you want to talk about, it doesn't matter if it's police, it could be the fire departments, it could be maybe public works, it could be the city council, it could, whatever group of people you want to talk about, there's going to be about 1% of them that are bad apples. The actual problem is there's too damn many people in the world. And so the more people we have, the more problems we're going to have. And with the way the media and social media is we hear about it a heck of a lot more. And the only thing we hear is the negatives. We don't hear the positives. I 100%, 100% think this resolution should be go forward.
For the
My
record, I
issue
think everyone in
is-
public health is a saint.
Go ahead, Sean, sorry.
I just wanted to say I think everyone in public health is a saint, 1% included. So just
I'd have
wanted
to agree with that.
interject some levity.
Mhm. Yeah, probably school teachers too, I gotta say. So, but my issue with this is that it's so broad that it doesn't feel like this has something to do with Lake Stevens City Council. It's such a broad resolution that it's more across the country. I don't think anybody's paying attention to what Lake Stevens City Council is doing in this resolution. I would far rather focus on our police department that I do feel we have a responsibility for, which is why we raised Chief Dyer's salary and why we are so fortunate to have this amazing police department. I would far rather focus on them and see how we can help them. They have need of support in other areas too, such as social workers or having people approach law with a more humane approach. So I just feel like it muddies the waters, and I just don't feel like it's necessary to do this.
Any last comments on this?
So Mayor, is this, will this end up on next week's council meeting for a vote, or where does it stand?
We'll put that on next
On the
week.
next vote.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next subject then, and that's going to be the legislative agenda. Gene, I think you've got this one.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, citizens. This is kind of a housekeeping matter. We do this every year. We formulate our thoughts, get them down on paper as far as what our legislative priorities would be for the city of Lake Stevens. We typically always start with transportation. We list those projects, which we've done here on page 1 of the handouts we've presented. I did notice one change I want to make right off the bat. It says 20th Street. That should say Northeast. So that's right in downtown on that project. But this is an opportunity just to get this information in front of council so you can be thinking about projects that you might want to add or maybe change the definitions and that type of thing, and give feedback when Doug Levy is out in a week's time. Another part of what we do is look at items that we want to oppose, monitor, or support, and we've listed some of those for council's consideration as well, and I believe Doug will go over that when he is out. So this was this evening just a chance to get this in front of you so you can start writing some notes, getting some thoughts. If you have any questions for me that you would like Doug to answer next week, please feel free to get those to me.
Each of the things in the transportation line items are in our 6-year transportation plan, right?
I will double check that, Kim, but I'm fairly confident.
Because the one that I had, the 20th Street in Main, 20th Street Northeast in Maine, I wasn't sure that that was on our 6-year plan.
So, Kim, I think you might be right. That might be the only one not in there. We'll need to address.
So we would have to update the plan in order, because doesn't this have to be in the plan in order to get any kind of funds from the state or the feds?
Russ, you want to jump in there?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely correct. That is the baseline. We're going through our capital facilities plan update right now as part of this year's comp plan. So you will see any changes to our transportation plan, including this proposed improvement added.
Okay. And that's going to be done before session?
It should be completed November or so this year.
Okay. That was the only one that I saw, and I was just hoping it was on our 6-year plan, so.
Thank you for that, council member.
Hey, Gene, I got a quick question for you. Don't mean to put you on the spot here. So Doug Levy, I've just been really impressed with how well he represents us in his, his efforts as a lobbyist. What are the terms of his contract? And what's our plan moving forward in the event that that contract expires and he's not retained?
It's year to year, and I believe we've been working on updating that right now. We are, and I appreciate your words, council member, we are very fortunate to have Doug on our team. He is by far, I believe, the best lobbyist out there, and he chose to keep Lake Stevens on board when he let a lot of other cities go, but he kept Lake Stevens on board because we produce. He works hard for us and works directly with the mayor to lobby for the city of Lake Stevens. We receive the funds, we put them to work and get the projects done. And we've had a history of doing that where a lot of cities aren't as productive. I'll leave it at that.
I'll put my support in for Doug Levy. He did a great job when we went to Washington, D.C. as well. So not only is he Washington State centric, but he also can focus on DC as well and seem to know a lot of contacts there as well. He's been great for us, and I will continue to support his lobbyist for Lake Stevens.
And one of the things I'd like to say about Doug is something that impressed me down in at the state legislature was when we're in with Senator Hobbs. Hobbs made a comment, I don't remember the exact comment, but Doug Levy basically left the office and said, I've got homework to do. And he was basically tasked to go to the other legislatures and tell them what the senator has said. And by the time he got done and around there, everything went through just fine. And he did the legwork basically for the senator. But he wasn't really doing it for the senator, he was doing it for us because it was one of our projects. And so I thought that was pretty impressive, the way he just, okay, I'll just go do the senator's job and get this done. That's the way it looked.
Yeah, we had a similar instance of that when we met with Representative Mead and Representative Lubbock. He took some direct action that was able to get us funds. And so it was really impressive to watch how responsive and respectful Representatives Lubbock and Mead were towards him. There was a mutually positive relationship, and that's great. I'd love to see that continue.
Yeah, I'll further the Doug's a good guy train here. I'll tell you, I probably talk with him, if not daily, every other day on a subject, because he's so knowledgeable about how to navigate things. He's truly a great asset for the city. I didn't recognize that as a council member until I jumped in this spot, and he's a great asset for us.
I would echo Marcus's comments regarding Washington, D.C. Having been exposed to our previous consultant back there, Doug's a valuable asset, so I think we need to keep him on board.
Hey, let's jump back on the legislative items. Is there anything here that you folks are having issues with, or questions or thoughts?
Just one thought I would have, Mr. Mayor, is I realize this is our legislative agenda, but I'm also wondering if we have maybe a short list of working with Snohomish County and maybe our adjacent cities. And the one thing I'll reference, hopefully at some point we will get some normality to our economy, but the idea of this regional sports complex from the tourism board. So I hope we're still pressing that issue. I know it's, we're in uncertain times, but I think maybe we need to have a little bit of a short list as to working with the county and other cities.
Yeah, I like that. Good point. We'll get that. I like that a lot. One of the things that would be on that list is I've been working with County Council Member Lowe on extending that South Lake Stevens Trail down to the Centennial. And I think it's a joint ask at the legislature to have them jump in on that project as well. Sure.
Agreed.
Gene, you got anything else on this?
Nope. Please feel free to make your notes if you want to email those to me if you have questions, or just be prepared to discuss it when Doug comes out. That works as well. Thank you.
And Doug will be on the agenda for this coming Tuesday. So give you a good heads up and be able to quiz him if you need to. Give him a quiz, Mary. Teacher's quiz. All right, let's move to the next subject, which is full-time mayor subject, and Gene and Barb.
Thanks again, Mayor. I really appreciate being able to bring this back to you this evening. Hearing the dialogue from council and seeing the importance to the city of Lake Stevens that this has, and the passion behind the comments and the questions, we felt it was critical to bring this back as soon as possible. So we have it for you this evening. We're prepared to answer some of the budgeting questions, but I just wanted to say that, if Lake Stevens were a city that weren't growing, this wouldn't be such a critical need. But from my view as a city administrator, the help that I receive from the full-time hours that the mayor has been putting in and the prior mayor put in has been invaluable. We talked about a couple examples this evening. This meeting with Congressman Larson, that was our mayor that pushed that. Because of COVID, we had to cancel our legislative breakfast. So he's been reaching out to our federal lobbyists to bring them into Lake Stevens, do that work. The South Lake Stevens Trail extension, the regional park, those are projects that the mayor works on, and they're critical for a growing community to bring in this infrastructure. And so I appreciate everybody hearing this and asking the tough questions, and hopefully we can provide some good answers for you tonight. Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you because you put some work on the budget, and please explain where we're at on that.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, council. Everyone got the kind of some updated materials. What I did is I updated the forecast for everything you guys have approved recently. Well, actually that budget amendment that Barb has, you're going to vote on next week. I went and included all that stuff in the forecast. So it includes, Gene's raise, the chief's raise, an HR raise, and it includes the Public Works switching employees out and getting supervisors and their allocations. And so I just letting you know that that is now the current general fund forecast. And then the other line is just if you add a mayor to the general fund and what the impact is. And so other than that, I just want to let you know that that's if we ended this year and we're on target with revenues and expenditures, that's kind of what it would look like.
Josh, I actually don't see the email.
Oh, did you not get the graph? Okay. Well, I mean, it was sent out. Kelly sent it out
yesterday. Would you like me to get it up on the screen?
Yeah, you can put it's very simple. We can put it on the screen.
Yep. Hold on here. Sorry about that.
but I think it was a good thing you guys asked for that because it does, you know, you guys have made a lot of decisions and it's, you don't really see it, the impact to the general fund live. So what this graph is, that blue line is all the decisions you guys have made as of current and forecasting, you know, going out for forecasting out in the future. Obviously, that doesn't include any new employees. That doesn't include anything people might ask for in the 2021 budget, but that's what it looks like now. And when you include the mayor, that's kind of what it would look like, that graph.
But
I think we lost the graph, Kelly.
I know. I know you did. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can get this back relatively easy. Hold on.
so this looks like the graph we've seen at the previous two
Yeah, it's very similar.
conversations.
Yeah.
Are you seeing my graph?
I'm seeing the graph.
Okay, I'm seeing, sorry, I have multiple monitors. Okay.
No
good.
worries. So is this the graph that actually represents all of the positions that we've made changes in
Yes.
addition to the proposed mayor change?
Well, the proposed mayor change is the gray line. So I wanted to separate the two out so you could see them individually.
So what I specifically have been asking for, this being the third council meeting or workshop, is to see what the total picture looks like of budgetary impacts, because we're not just talking about the full-time mayor budgetary impact, but the complete budgetary impact of all of the decisions we've made.
Yeah, the blue line is that is to date. That includes the city manager's pay raise, the police pay raise, the change of the public works employees, and the effect on the general fund. But you know, this is just the general fund and the contingency fund combined. But this, we also added some revenues. We added Davies Beach has been pulling in a lot of money. So I actually added revenue to this forecast as well. But this is the current with all your decisions through the ordinance 10-1095. The blue line is that.
What other new revenues have you added to this line?
That's pretty much the only one.
So Davies Beach is
Yeah.
a revenue line item you've added.
The other big thing with this scenario is I took, there were a few forecasts that we had reductions to revenues and expenditures for COVID. I went ahead and removed those. We're not really seeing any impact right now, not as big as we thought. So this graph is straight budget that we have in the general fund that's not being reduced by outside forces right now.
And it includes our anticipated revenues,
Yes.
sales tax revenues, property tax revenues, all that.
Yep. I removed the reduction because we're just not seeing a reduction. So.
Question, I think for Jean, but maybe for Marcus, I'm not sure. We at one point had talked about discussing at the retreat opportunities for departments to discuss holes in their staffing and make presentations around staffing requests or needs that they had to just be able to meet the need of the city. Is that still part of the agenda, or has the agenda been set?
It is. It's a strategic plan and it's all but complete. So
great, thank you.
So Councilmember Jorstad, on that subject, when we looked at last week, we had to re-look at the retreat and the number of subjects that were on that agenda. And that's why, and then we had to start doing some backwards planning on that, just with the amount of things that we have already on the agenda for that retreat. That's why you're seeing quite a few things today. And that's why you're going to see in the next workshop quite a few other subjects, just because we can't fit them all into that small time frame for that retreat.
That's helpful, Mayor. Thank you.
thanks, Josh, for that update. I just didn't feel it was representative of reality having planned 20% reductions, I believe is what we had used for planning with COVID, and we just haven't seen that. Our revenues are stable, on track, if not a little ahead. So what you see here is representative of reality of where we are today.
And so, question for you. So the annexation, do we have a timeline for when that annexation is coming on board? Because I understand that's going to bring in some pretty significant revenue for the city, the Machias industrial area. Does this forecast include any of those projections? And if it doesn't, what do we anticipate those revenues being?
So the timeline for the annexation at this point, we're looking to bring it back at the next meeting, which we are, to provide additional information. However, council's not going to be able to take action and conclude their public hearing till probably the next meeting in September. And there'll be a 45-day review period with Snohomish County after that. So the annexation should be completed end of November, beginning of December of this year. But the taxes, and Josh, help me out here, don't start coming into the city for a period of time after that. And at this point, I think we're looking at the revenue is going to be about 100,000 in property taxes. Doesn't include any wholesale, retail type taxes that may come out of that area.
You're saying we get $100,000 in property tax that would come to the city as a result of the annexation.
Yeah, and that's the combined taxes for schools and all of that, not just the city's individual portion.
Okay.
Any more questions on the budget?
So it'd be about $10. No, I'm just teasing.
So Josh, just to clarify, this revenue projection, you are not grabbing or trying to speculate future income, i.e. Costco, i.e. is it Ross or Marshall's that's opened up at Frontier Village? Potential retail where the old Albertsons is. These are real numbers. These aren't speculative numbers, correct?
Yeah, you're correct. They're not. We actually had a few scenarios where real speculative, but they just change so often. It's hard to keep a good forecast going. So you're correct. They're as of revenues of today, but we put pretty healthy sales tax assumptions. I think in there they're like 8% or 10% more each year, which actually compounds to quite a bit over time. So I think the forecast has built in a pretty healthy fact that Lake Stevens is sales tax is going up. So we're not real conservative. I would say conservative would be like putting at 4%. We're at double that in the forecast. But so as real numbers come in, we'll update our forecast. But if something big happens like Costco, we'll definitely add that in the forecast and not wait for real numbers to come in. The truth of it takes a lot of sales to make an impact on those forecasts. I mean, you're talking things as big as Costco. Things as big as Ross, might be 30,000 for a whole year. So
Josh, I just want to say thank you. This has been kind of a central question that I've brought up here for the past few times, and I'm happy to have it answered. So thank you for all your hard work. I know it is difficult to do these calculations and these projections. There's a lot of accounting wizardry involved. So thank you for all of that.
I would say from our department, from finance, that this is, even though it's looking good, I'm still conservative about these things. So we've held back expenditures for COVID. I'm assuming that we're spending everything. So we'll probably land the year better. But it's hard to make all the assumptions on one graph. So we're hoping that we'll have higher revenues and lower expenditures. That's the goal.
Thanks again, Josh. The other question I was asked was, what are the tasks that the mayor does? So we've enlisted Anya's help to list those out. It was included in one of the handouts, but it wasn't real complete. So Anya's completed that for you. My position, I operate the day-to-day operations for the city. And so the mayor's tasks are a lot different than that. And Anya will share those with you.
Hello, I will turn my video on. Kelly,
can you share that document, or you want to give me access?
Let's see if this works here. Can you guys see this? Try to make it bigger here. Are you seeing the mayor duties?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Is that in a readable format?
It's a little too big now.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, so what we did was we combined the information from the PowerPoint that we already gave you with some of the list of duties that the mayor, a full-time mayor, would do. We looked at the council procedures manual as for the mayor duties on there as well. Looked at city code, and then I met with the mayor and the city administrator, and we discussed additional duties that a full-time mayor would do. So that's how we came up with this list based off of what the mayor has currently been doing at a full-time capacity. And I'd like to also say that this probably isn't inclusive of everything. You know, there's lots of ins and outs that can't be captured on a piece of paper. But we felt that this was a pretty good list to share with you guys on what that would look like. So. You guys have any questions? Be happy to take some.
Thank you. That's really helpful to see the list. I know that's not inclusive of everything, but it's good to see, you know, what kind of things he's going to be out there doing for us.
Yep.
The other question that had come up is, you know, why the mayor? Why the mayor and not a hired staff or hire a company to represent the city as the champion? And the simple answer to that is the mayor position of itself carries clout that a staffer does not carry, a consultant does not carry. When the mayor calls, people listen, and that's the simplest way to explain it. That's why Mr. Congressman Larson was out today. The mayor asked, will you come out and see the community? And, you know, he was the champion for Lake Stevens, and Congressman was here today.
And Rick Larson's not even a representative, so that's pretty impressive to me that both of them would make the effort to have that contact. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, Gene, because I'm thinking of all the mayors of the surrounding cities. I can't tell you who the city administrator, no disrespect to you. I don't know who Marysville, I don't know Snohomish, I don't know Everett, I don't know Monroe. I don't know any of the other cities' city administrator, but I sure as heck know the mayor, and I know everything about the mayor. The city administrator, unless you're Mill Creek, doesn't make the newspaper. And so that's a good thing. But they are the face. And the reality is there's twice this past week, the mayor and I were out doing a service project last Saturday, and a community member came up and started a conversation, happened to be a developer. And so you know, it was interesting. I mean, you really can't go anywhere. We went and checked out the Public Works building, and a citizen stopped him and said, hey, what's going on? And so he is the face of the city. Whether you like him or not, whether you voted for him or not, whether the people that are in your support group or your, you know, people that have your ear, like him or not, he's the face of the city. And so, you know, the question for me comes back, and I really appreciate Councilmember Frederick's concern for the budget, because that's a really important issue for me. But I would just ask, you know, for us to consider what's in the best interest of the city, what's going to help the city move forward. And as Gene said, without John Spencer and without the last couple of years of Vern Little working full time for a part-time wage, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So I would, Marcus, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you had some concerns last time, wanted a little more time. I'm wondering if you, you know, what your thoughts, if anything's changed over the last week, and your thoughts.
First and foremost, Vern Little did not work full-time at any point. So whoever's saying that is not true. So I won't go along with that statement. I did see the financials. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Todd Welch mentioned that at the meeting last week. Said the last 2 years, so I wouldn't know.
Todd Welch was incorrect. I think Marcus and I spent more time at the legislature than Vern Little ever did.
So Angie and Mary, you guys have been silent. I'm curious if you guys have any additional thoughts you wanted to share.
I appreciate the opportunity to get additional information. So appreciate Josh and the budget information. Thanks, Jean, for bringing this onto the agenda tonight.
Yeah, I would echo Angie's appreciation of Josh's hard work. Math was never my strong point, so thank you, Josh. I still, one thing I thought was interesting was in our meeting last week, and I called the mayor about this too. I think we all understand that we need a full-time mayor because the job is a full-time job. It's just the fact that this is an elected position, not a position like Jean Brazel or Russ Wright or Anya. So it makes it different for me. Is the job a full-time job? I think we all agree on that, I believe. Not to put words in other people's mouths, but I just feel like the council's not the place that makes that choice. That's all. I haven't changed my view on that. Thank you.
All right, Jean, do you have anything else on this?
I don't, but I appreciate the comments.
There are no other comments. That's the last subject for tonight. Unless anybody wants to take an alibi on anything, I think we're done.
So, Mr. Mayor, where does this issue stand with the full-time mayor discussion?
So there is a motion that has been tabled. And so it would be up to the council if they wish to take it off the table and vote on it.
I was going to add this to our next agenda.
Okay.
You need a motion for that, or?
My recollection, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. My recollection was that it was tabled until further discussion at the retreat. And so would putting it on the agenda, then there would potentially be a motion to vote sooner than that? Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
So Robert's rules allows you to, we would have to do it, if Marcus wished to vote on it this next Tuesday, then he could make a motion at that meeting to take it off the table and vote on it next Tuesday.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Actually completely self-serving and not related to the conversation about the full-time mayor at all. Before we get off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's had an opportunity to reach out to me. For those that don't know, I'm actually in New Orleans on personal business, so it's fairly late at night for me anyway, after 10 p.m. So I just want to say thank you. And that's really it.
How's the weather down there?
It is so hot. I can't wait to get back. I so can't wait to get back.
Hey, we'll accept you back to the city as long as you bring bags of crawdads, right?
Yeah, I do have, if I can't add something, I'm not sure the protocol, but I'm aware that I believe Jill, our parks person, is putting together kind of a committee or a deal for people in the community to more organized community service opportunities. And I'd love to get an update from her or whoever is responsible for that, because I'd love to see that rolled out in 2021. Because I realize now there's some limitations on that, but maybe I'm speaking out of turn here. But if there's a way to move that forward, I'd love to see that happen, because joined with some neighbors last night to do some community service, and talking to some of the neighbors that were impacted, they also expressed an interest in helping out. So I'd love it if there was a way that we could point someone to a website and say, hey, I want to help out, and partner with the city to make our community stronger, because a lot of people want to help out and serve.
Thank you for that comment, Councilmember Ewing. I actually had that conversation with Jill today. So we do have a program together, and the next step is going live on our website to provide those volunteer options. And she and the Public Works Department are going to be putting a roster of a variety of different types of projects together. So thank you for that. And I have also asked Jill to put together a brief, maybe one-page statement for council's benefit that describes what the program is going to entail and all of that. So you will be seeing that shortly.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to need to give you a phone call really soon on a couple of parks issues.
Okay.
Nothing bad, it's all good, but I want to pickle your brain on a couple of things for our parks.
Okay.
Some citizens have given me, so.
You got my number. Okay, everybody, I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Go out and enjoy your families. It's school starts tomorrow, so hug your kids and watch them in front of the screen tomorrow. Should be interesting. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.